Let me welcome you to this session, which I hope will please you because it's a restorative class. Um, Most people enjoy restorative classes, and um, I landed on this choice for today because I've been quite busy with uh, singing and preparing for a competition that's called the Estedford. And I participated in that with my choir of about 60 people. And that was on Monday night. It went quite late. And then on Tuesday morning, I decided that with my yoga group, we would do a restorative practice and kind of reboot our energy. And I think that happens a lot, is that you go from a very active time and you hit the ground running and you still have to be very active after that. So I think it's good to insert a space there where you have time to reboot and get your energy back. So what we're going to do in today's session is very prop-centric. So you'll need these props that you see in the view behind me, a bolster, a chair, a couple of yoga blankets, and 2 blocks, and of course your yoga mat. So I'll give you a moment to assemble any of those things that you might be missing. Did I mention a chair as well? And we'll start with a lying down position that's called Supta Baddha Konasana. I'll say one more thing about doing restorative practice. There are elements that are involved in it that if you have them in place, then it makes for a good reboot. And one of the things is to have your environment temperature appropriate. At the moment, it's on the cusp of winter. We'll be shifting over to winter next week. So it's a little bit chilly here. So make sure that you have things to keep you warm. And it's good to have an environment that's not too bright. I'm in a studio situation, so I have to have bright lights. But if you can put your dimmer on and turn down that light volume, then that's a good thing. It's also good to be quiet. So you put your phone on Do Not Disturb, and you'll have a quiet time. And the last thing is this practice in the physical part of it involves stretching. So stretching with the idea in mind to relieve tension and being careful not to create more tension. So let's begin on the mat in our reclining position. So I'm going to take up these props and start with the yoga blocks and do this setup for lying down with these 2 blocks supporting a bolster. So I've got one on the mid-range, one lying flat, and then the bolster placed on top of those 2. And next in my propping, I've got a yoga blanket, and I've opened it up so that it's pretty large, and I'm going to ribbon it back and forth on its uh, long end, so I end up with something that looks like that. When I lie down, I'm seated in front of the bolster, so my buttocks on the floor, and right up against the end of the bolster with my long yoga blanket. And I'm going to take that over my feet, around my calf muscles and my thighs to support them. It's a good foot warmer as well. And finally, lying down onto the bolster. So my whole torso is supported from my back waist to the top of my head. One prop I didn't mention, but you might have already set this up for yourself for the end of the class, is a yoga eye pillow. And I'm just going to rest that over my eyes. And I'm going to be here for 2 or 3 minutes. The arms you can place out to the side like you do for your Shavasana, your yoga relaxation. Or you could also, people seem to enjoy this, I do, rest your hands across your torso, where you have one hand above your navel and one below. And relax your shoulders. I'm going to leave my arms supported and just dropping out. And you want to release the weight of your arms from your shoulders right down to the backs of your hands. The way that you've propped yourself up on the bolster allows you to open up your chest. So feel that advantage at the top front corners of your chest. And maybe even explore taking the breath right up to the brim of your chest on your inhalations and releasing it completely on your exhalations. And we'll take just one more minute here, a chance to really let go. And then think about moving before you actually do. And when you're ready to do so, then bring your knees up and roll off your props to the side and come up to a seated position. And from here, we're going to do a very simple stretch or kind of mobilizing your spine in cat-cow position. So I just get my props away, and I think it's warm enough now for me to take my socks off. But I'm not going to put them too far away. Take an all fours position on your mat. And let's move the spine through lifting and dipping the spine and with the breath. So inhale, the spine drops, and exhale, the spine lifts up. And we move through those two potentials with the breath and in a relaxed manner of a restorative practice. What we might do here too is move the spine a little differently. So take pause and allow the right hip to move towards the right shoulder. Look to the right and then come center position again, and left hip towards the left shoulder, looking to the left. And then let's move through those two possibilities, right side, left side, for several rounds, where we're able to move into the hips and the base of the spine. And the next time, and finishing on that left side, coming back to center, tuck your toes under, lift your knees, and rather than doing dog pose, we'll do another warm-up. Just walk forward towards your hands and inhale and come all the way up to standing. I think it's quite a nice thing every once in a while to give Tadasana, the basic standing pose, pride of place. So let's just take Tadasana with the feet slightly apart and taking time to get grounded through the feet. I like to lift my toes and spread them and then bring them back down, lengthened. Relax your shoulders, let them drop. And then lengthen the frontal body from the bottom of your torso up to the top of your chest without flaring the ribs. So the ribs, I don't know if contained is quite a good idea, but as a description, but the ribs towards the hips and relaxed. And then let's move towards the wall and do half dog pose with your hands on the wall. And start with your hands placed on the wall a little bit higher than your shoulders. Open your hands, stretch your thumbs, and then step back a modest distance from the wall, and then fold your forward fold, hinging from the tops of your thighs, and extending arms as much as you can at this moment, and shoulders back away from the arms. From here, lift your tailbone, and we'll begin that process of stretching that's helpful for a restorative practice in a gentle way in this fashion. And then take a little walk in. Lower your hands so that they're just out from your shoulders. All 5 fingers, 4 fingers and thumbs stretched. And then step back. You might be able to deepen that hinge at the bottom of your torso a little bit more. And as well, still lifting the tailbone. Keep your head in line with your upper part of your arms instead of dropping towards the floor. And then take another little walk in. Last one. It's a good wrist stretch for me too. Lower your hands so that they're just out from your ribs. And then step back. Put your attention on the back of your body. And as much as you can, picture or create that neutral spine where it's lengthened, but pretty much parallel with the floor now. Lift your knees, lift your front thigh muscles, deepen the hip fold, and lift the tailbone once more. And then let's release, coming up, inhaling, and onto your mat again. In Tadasana. Take Tadasana with an emphasis on opening to the breath. And to do that, bring your hands around the lower part of your rib cage, where your thumbs are on the back ribs, and cup your hands around the ribs. And feel your breath into the sides of your rib cage in Tadasana, and the back ribs as well. And the hands there were just to cue you. Release your arms down by your side again. Lengthen your arms. Draw up from that grounding quality of your feet into your legs and your hips with your shoulders relaxed. Tadasana, the mountain pose. And then now is a good time to move into full dog pose. Take your kneeling position and lift your upper part of your spine up towards the ceiling, like we did in cat-cow. Draw your navel up towards your back, towards your spine. Tuck your toes under, and as you lift your knees, push into your hands strongly and stretch away. Arms, legs. Let's pedal the feet and get a little work through the calf muscles. If you're a walker, as I am, and I really enjoy walking, this is a beautiful way to get the lower leg, the back of the leg stretched from your heel, from your back of your knee to your heel. All right, and then coming to a standstill, literally, and then take a walk forward and inhale and come all the way up to standing. Tadasana, our basic pose. In some circles, this is called samastiti. So that version, translated from Sanskrit, means steady standing. So see if you can connect with that, even closing your eyes to get a sense of standing on your own 2 feet. Soften a little bit at the back of your knees. Feel a strong connection with the ground and draw energy up all the way to the top chest, to the crown of your head. All right, and then take up your bolster again and those 2 blocks. And we had them set up in this manner at the beginning for Supta Baddha Konasana, and 1 block on the low end, 1 on the medium range, something like that, for child's pose. So in child's pose, make any concessions for your knee bend that you need to. And sometimes what you can do, just to avoid compressing the knees overly, is to sit up just right at the very edge of the bolster. So there's a little bit less pressure onto the knees. And then coming forward to rest your head. And make any adjustments that you need here. I can sit pretty easily onto my heel, so that works for me. As far as your position of your head and your neck. So I tend to find more comfort in just turning my head to the right, not so much to the left. So I might stay this position for the next 2 minutes of the timing for this pose. But you might have your head one way and then decide to turn it the other way at some point. That's up to you. The main thing in supported child's pose like this is that you have access to feeling your breath in a different way. So we have that support through the prop, the soft prop, and the breath can be felt in the frontal body on every breath. And as you're well supported there, then you might also let go a little bit more. So the back body rests lightly and in a relaxed way on the frontal body, on the props. And feel on every breath that you can soften a little bit into that bolster. And just a few more breaths. If you haven't rotated your head and your neck, this might be a good time to do it. And press your hands down, lift up. And we'll keep the bolster and possibly the blocks and do the supported version of downward facing dog pose. So another one of the elements of doing restorative practice is that some very few of the poses are somewhat inverted, as is dog pose. So it's a gentle way of doing an inversion. And especially when your head is down and supported onto the props. So I've taken a bolster and a block to rest my head on, and that seems to be the right height for me now. Actually, as I've been here for several breaths, I might lower down a little bit more. But you take the number of props that you need for your own ability to stretch, for your own anatomy. And we'll take a minute here in supported dog pose. After the version of walking the dog, then in the static pose, I can feel my calf muscles are a little bit more released than they were when I was first doing this, the first round. And feel your breath come and go.
And in the last part of the timing in this pose, just notice whether you've collapsed a little bit through your arms, and maybe intensify the stretch through your palms, all five, 4 fingers and your thumb pressing down, back to your shoulders. Once more, lift your tailbone. And then we're going to come out of the pose, first walking forward, walk your hands back, and inhale, come up to standing. We'll do the propped version of Uttanasana, forward fold position. And my bolster, I'm going to rest against the wall at, I don't know, an angle. Not sure how much that angle is, but we'll find out in a minute. So if I do this propped version, the bolster propped at the wall, and take my forward bend from the tops of my thighs, I can come into a very gentle version, once more resting my forehead or the crown of my head onto the bolster. And that is one version. Now I can come into this a little bit more deeply. If I lower the bolster, my support, and gradually deepening my forward bend. So now I'm very much into calf muscle, hamstring stretch, tailbones lifted. And as I've been there for a few breaths, I can go down a little bit lower. But this is my pose. This is my version of the pose. And you might stay at a higher level. We're in the process of restorative yoga and not competitive yoga. And avoiding that tendency which I have, which is even competing with myself. See if I can do better than I did the last time. So I'm just trying to keep this edge towards being relaxed. So you're able here just at the end to bring your hands on the backs of your legs. Give the backs of your legs a good rub. Just treat those muscles, those hamstrings, the backs of the knees, the lower leg. Good. And then to come out, bend your knees well over your ankles. Inhale your way up and all the way to standing. All right. It's time to grab your chair. And place it right up against the wall. For Padottanasana, actually we'll do, now the name has escaped me, the asymmetrical pose. I'm going to place the bolster onto my chair and step right foot forward and left foot back. For another forward fold, but from an asymmetrical position, so one leg forward, one leg back. You want to be at a distance where when you reach your hands forward, when you bend your torso forward, you'll still be able to fold your arms and rest your head onto your folded arms on the bolster. Now,
If you need a higher lift to the bolster, put some blocks underneath it. But let's start from upright and facing towards the chair. My right foot a little bit to the right, my left foot a little bit to the left. So I've got space at the top of my thighs and hips square. Ease forward gradually and make any adjustments to the distance that you've created from the chair so that you can comfortably rest your forearms onto the chair, your folded arms, and your head onto your arms. In going forward, the front knee is slightly flexed. And over the next minute or so that you'll be in the pose, you might work towards straightening that leg within your range of comfort. And then I like to do a little test here to see whether my sacrum is level. So I can feel I've dropped on the one side of my sacrum. So I'm going to lift, getting more attention into the back leg. Lift that hip, bring the outer left hip forward and the outer right hip back. I've got right leg forward, left leg back. The last part here, let go of any heavy feeling in your shoulders. Let the shoulder blades drop out. Keep lengthening into the right leg, left leg. Take some longer exhalations. And then lift your chest. Bring your hands up onto the bolster to push away and bend the front knee to come all the way up. Step left foot to the right and right foot back. Before you go forward and down, adjust the hips so that they're pointing directly forward and level. And then flex the left knee slightly to start your movement towards the bolster. And once your arms are resting on the bolster, relax your shoulders, relax your forehead where you rest onto your arms. And at the moment, my front leg is still a little bit bent. I'm just going to do my assessment here to see whether my hips are level. And I can feel that I'm dropping on the left side. So I'm going to lift up the left hip, make that adjustment. But whatever it is for you, so as much as possible, the sacrum stays parallel with the ceiling. But we are in the process of restorative yoga, so release as much as you can. And still maintaining the hamstring stretch, the back leg stretch. I'm gradually straightening my front leg. And then soften the front knee, bend a little bit, support yourself with your hands on the bolster, push away, inhale and come up, step up, and then Tadasana. So at this point, I'm going to have my eyes closed and sense and feel my footing, the outline of my feet, and drawing energy from the ground up into the hips and the torso at the same time as releasing my shoulders. Lastly, in your Tadasana, can you feel where your weight falls on your feet? I'm just noticing I'm mainly on my heels, So I'm going to spread the weight load to the forefoot, base of the big toe, base of the little toe, releasing shoulders. We have one more standing pose here, which is a favorite of mine, which is Prasarita Padottanasana, and that's wide leg forward fold. So this time, you're going to have the chair facing away from the wall and a wall space to rest your buttocks on to start with. So I'm exactly facing the chair, buttocks onto the wall, and grabbing a few props. So for your own comfort, a bolster, a blanket. Actually, in the wide version of this pose, when you're bending forward, you might not need, it's easier to get to your support. You might not need as much as a bolster. I'm just going to put a blanket up and see if that works for me. But as always, then your body, your own anatomy is a guide for what you need. So in your standing position, we start from upright, fold, my feet are a little bit away from the wall, a couple of inches away from the wall, wide stance, and then coming forward from the tops of the thighs and reaching down, arms supported onto the chair, and then head supported onto your arms. And letting go to the support. Now I could work towards getting a stronger stretch on my legs by moving my feet back, wriggling my feet back towards the wall. And actually I can get all the way to the baseboard, the skirting board, with my heels. So at this point, having the buttocks on the wall kind of pushes me away from the wall. So I'm just pushing back towards the wall, through my buttocks, through the backs of my legs. And this is the strong hamstring stretch. If it's too strong for you, just flex your knees or gradually straighten and work towards a full stretch. Lift your tailbone. Let your shoulders be loose. Lift your navel. Get a sense of the pelvic floor here. It's quite a stretch for the pelvic floor area as well. We'll stay fully one more minute. It's a well-supported pose, and see how much we can let go. Where your forehead rests, kind of the edge of your forehead near your hairline. Relax your forehead down towards your eyes. Relax your facial features, your jaw. And it's time to move out of your pose gradually. Shuffle your feet into center, walk away from the wall, and we'll take Tadasana for the last time in this sequence. And in your stance, well supported, feeling your footprints. Take the arms a little bit away from the sides of the body and feel into the upper ribs, the underarms. There's a little bit of space there. Relax the elbows completely. Soften behind your knees. We're just about to move into Setu Bandha, a supported back bend, and using once again the bolster and two of your blocks. I think that should do it. So I'm going to put my blocks on the high end and right up against the wall. So one is in front of the other. And along the way, grab my eye bag because I'm going to be in this pose for probably 5 minutes. And I want to be utterly comfortable. And part of that is in placing the bolster in front of my upright blocks, I want to find the distance. The blocks are there so I can elevate my feet. And the bolster is there to support my torso. This is a very individual thing. So I've quickly gotten myself into this reclining position to demonstrate. And what I notice is that I haven't quite got the place where I want to be because my shoulders are off the floor. My head is resting on the floor. And I want more support for my shoulders. So I'm going to ease back from the wall. The end of the bolster now is at the bottom edge of my shoulder blades, and my shoulders just hovering a few centimeters off the floor. So that's my best position, but you might, for your own body, because you're putting yourself into a back bend, you might, instead of having your feet elevated, your legs elevated, have your feet on the floor on either side of the bolster, and that's not quite as much a back bend for your low back. Also, you might come off the bolster a little bit more. What we're looking for is a maximal opening for the top chest and for the top of your lungs, and a support that takes you out of any shoulder rounding or back rounding and opens up the shoulder blade area. So you can do this in a few variations and find the one that suits your own body. Once you've gotten there, and probably you've arrived there more quickly than I have with all of my talking, then you might cover your eyes or just have your eyes closed. What you do with your arms as in Shavasana, or your elbows crooked, kind of goalpost arms with your elbows crooked, or even having your arms folded overhead, one hand resting in the palm of the other. To me, this feels quite strong to have an overhead stretch.
And in keeping with restorative, I might have my arms more Shavasana-ish. And we'll stay for just a couple of minutes here. Time for you to let go. And even though my shoulders were hovering a little bit off the floor in the beginning of lying here, something is released in my upper part of my back. So I'm more supported there, and my shoulders are supported onto the floor now too. Soften the frontal ribs. And when we do back bends, the ribs tend to thrust forward and up. So just consider in that dividing area of the diaphragm between the abdomen and the chest, to soften the diaphragm ribs and let them settle more into the body. And then just watch your breath. I'm going to stage my release from the pose first by bringing my feet onto the floor on either side of the bolster. And in the next stage, beginning to push away towards the end of the bolster, stepping my feet back and lowering hips to the floor so that I'm well supported. And at this time, the whole of my torso resting onto the floor with my legs bent on either side of the bolster. And just taking a little time to consolidate there and releasing, hopefully, completely from back bending. So the spine is more neutral now. And gradually roll to the side and come up to a seated position. And we find another use for the bolster, and especially in the practice that we've done to create a rotation for the spine. So in this version of a twist,
instead of a forward bend in child's pose, we're doing kind of a side bend and rotation to be supported onto the bolster. So I start off with my legs bent and right angle at my hips. When I turn towards the bolster from this position and my legs are bent to the right, and then I'm turning my torso to the left slightly. It's a kind of belly twister, and it's a version of Bharadvajasana, which we sometimes do seated. So step your hands forward gradually. Bring yourself to rest the torso onto the bolster. And as before, when you did child's pose, find the direction where your head rests comfortably. At the moment, instead of turning my head opposite side, I'm just going to do a gentle version of this for my neck. My head is facing the same way as my legs. In any of the yoga poses that are not straight on, they're asymmetrical. You want to make sure that the two sides of the body feel supported. In this position and turning to the right, my knees to the right, my head to the right. My right shoulder is a little elevated. I'm going to focus on relaxing it. So you could maintain this version of Bharadvajasana for maybe 5 minutes. We won't hold it that long for today. So begin to gradually come up, support yourself onto your hands, push away, and let's flip over to the second side. Just get your hip right up against the edge of the bolster and then folding your legs. Stay upright and turn as much as you can to face the bolster. Keep your chest high and then gradually draw out and lower yourself down and rest your head. If you move your elbows out a little farther away from the bolster, it seems to have a nice effect on broadening your shoulders, broadening your shoulder blades. All right, and then we're moving on and supporting with the hands on either side of the bolster. Straighten the arms, lift up, and we're very nearly to our last poses. This is a practice. I think we've got on the sequence 12 poses altogether, so not so many. And as I said, we're very nearly to the end. We're going to take up the chair again. and place it a little bit away from the wall, seat of the chair facing out. And for my own comfort or pampering, I'm going to put a blanket onto the seat of the chair, just for warmth and for comfort. And the bolster is placed in front of the chair, in front of the chair legs at a little distance. And let me demonstrate how it'll look when I'm in my reclining position. So I could put my socks on, but I think I'm pretty warm. I'm able to cover myself. I've got an extra blanket here if I need it. And as I take up my about to be reclining position, I'm sitting on the bolster and swinging the lower legs up onto the seat of the chair. So there's a quality of an inverted pose in what we're doing, but very gentle slope of the legs. And I want to be close enough to the chair so that the legs are, 45 degrees? And if you have longer legs, make sure that you're not touching the wall. Then, what can I say? My shoulders, the back of my head, most of my shoulder blades are resting onto the floor. The hips a little elevated for that inverted quality. And then ready to place my eye covering on and settling in for probably 8 to 10 minutes. And I'll just mention a few details as we go along here. So where you've placed your arms, once again, find that, kind of sweet spot. So when you have your arms too far away from you, then it seems to pull on the upper arms and the shoulders. Arms too near in, it feels like you're contracting. So just find that optimum place for your own comfort. You could also just rest your hands onto your torso. I'm finding that at the moment is very nice because I can feel my breath through the sensitivity of my hands. So there's a little quality of back bending in your position. And if that feels at all stressful on your low back, then it's fine just to lie flat without the extra support of the bolster. On successive exhalations, you could feel the abdomen release into the back body. And then on each exhalation, relaxing your shoulders, yielding the support of the
dorsal thoracic to the floor. Two very relaxing, releasing things can happen as you stay a little longer. One is that the breath becomes quieter, and sometimes the abdomen gets a little bit noisier with something called peristalsis. And I noticed that was happening for me. So the rumbling of your tummy happens when there's release through the digestive organs. We might consider now a releasing from this pose to lie flat and to do this in a very gradual manner, where as you bring your legs down, I think we can do this if we slide far enough back from the chair. We can just have that bolster underneath the backs of the knees. So having moved the legs down and the legs resting on the ground, I've got a bolster underneath the backs of my knees. And let's take this time to consolidate. And allow the weight of the body to release into the floor from the back of your head through your shoulders and hips down to your heels. The arms well supported so the elbows can relax. And take a little time to do a body scan and relaxing the toes and the feet, the legs and the hips, the pelvis and buttocks, the back body to the shoulders, the back of the skull, and softening your facial features, your forehead, temples, and eyes, the bridge of your nose, the tip of your nose, the lips, the interior of your mouth, your ears, the throat, the whole body. And take all the time that you need to release from your mini Shavasana, rolling onto your side. And very gradually coming to take a seat. And in joining your hands in front of your chest in prayer position, we take the gesture as a sign of respect for ourselves, honoring the divine spark within, and we do the practice for our own betterment, but also to contribute to everyone. Namaste.